Welcome to Lofty Pursuits and Public Displays of Confection in Tallahassee, Florida. I'm Greg, and that's where we make hard candy here. You can come in and see us in person if you visit us in Tallahassee. But this video is going to be kind of strange because it's not going to be directly about candy. That's going to be the next one. Today's video is going to be about beer. As you heard in the last video, Ology and us, Ology is a brewery here in Tallahassee, have made a strawberry watermelon lime slush that is a Berliner style beer. It's a fruit beer with a very strong lime front taste. Strawberry is in the middle and watermelons at the end. And we did this as a collaboration. And I even got my logo on the beer. So I was asked, how do you collaborate between a beer and a candy? And there's a whole lot of ways. One of the ways is to work on packaging. The Ology packaging was here, and I worked with a commercial artist, a guy named Steven, to develop our packaging to match. I mean, it's our standard packaging, but we have a new label, which is something we rarely do, but we thought this occasion it counted for. And then, of course, we can also do flavor, which is what we're doing here. We're trying to match the flavor of the beer with some of the candy. We're trying not to lose where the candy is. Now, what we did to make this collaboration work was we figured out the intersection of candy and beer. And this was easier to do than you think. There's a whole lot of things that candy does well, and there's a whole lot of stuff that beer does well. But there's an overlap where we both do it well, and we decided there's a whole lot of projects we could do in this overlap, and one of them was this one. We do sour well, they do sour well. We do fruits well, they do fruits well, and of course, we can do carbonation even. So how do you get this to try this for yourself? Well, you get the candy at www.pd.net, the Lofty Pursuits candy website, public displays of confection, and we can ship it just about anywhere. The beer is a little trickier because of the way beer laws work. You're going to have to ask your local liquor store to special order it. And Ology beer is distributed over many parts of the country. But distribution is decided by demand. If enough people ask, it'll be better distributed. So I'm hoping that you, the viewers of this channel, will ask your local liquor store if they can get an Ology beer, because if enough people ask, and we get a lot of people on these projects. When we did our label election vote thing to select the label for our tangerine sour candy, we got 15,000 people to vote. If 15,000 people could ask for this beer would be everywhere. And that's what we want. We want you to try a Lofty Pursuits product you can drink. So experience the collaboration for yourself if you can. Experience our part definitely, because we know you can. And thank you for watching, because this has been fun. And next week, we're going to show you how we made the candy. But in this video, we're going to explore making the beer. What I love about this project is the journey for me just to explore something I don't know about. You see, I know a lot about candy making, but you guys out there are going to correct me when I make a mistake with brewing, so I know I'm going to read it in the descriptions and learn even more. But when I get to Ology, I see all this cool equipment, and equipment is a wonderful thing, especially when I don't know about it. I'm used to specialized equipment for candy making, but I'm not used to specialized equipment for other topics necessarily. And this stuff's big.
Nick Walker, owner and head brewer at Ology Brewing Company. So yeah, it's called mashing in. What we do is we get grains, anything from barley to wheat to oats, and they have naturally starches built up in them. That's for storage for when they grow and germinate and all that as a plant. But what we do in the process, or how we buy it, is called malted. So they let it germinate real short, and what that does is converts a lot of proteins into these starches. Then we heat up some water, and there's natural enzymes in the grain, and basically we accelerate the process that a plant's doing. So it takes all those starches and it converts them into simple sugars, maltose, glucose. Yeah, so like we said, candy making, beer making, you're trying to get these sugars all into one place so that you can consume them. The beer takes another step where we add yeast, and so what we're going to do is boil all the sugar water, add hops, and then we're going to add some fruit in the tank. But at that point, we're also going to be adding yeast, and so we've now created this environment that yeast can metabolize, eat these sugars and create alcohol and carbon dioxide. Yeah, it'll be fun. Strawberry, watermelon, limeade. It's like kind of like a slushy flavor, you know, kind of a la Sonic or some kind of a fast food drive-through flavor profile, but it'll be pretty deep fruit flavors. The beer's going to play a low level, the fruit's going to play a high level. It'll be a little tart. It's really going to be a beautiful product and a lot of fun to do with you. Yeah, so you can get our beer obviously in Tallahassee, our local market. You can get all across Florida, but we also move beer in Minnesota, in Illinois. We're in Tennessee, South Carolina. we are in Georgia, Louisiana, and Virginia. And so, you know, we move our beer through distributors. We are in and out of those states probably every month or two. So hopefully we can get some traction, move some beer. If your state doesn't carry the beer, they can reach out to us via email, and we'll talk about it and figure out what happens next.
The first thing that happens is cleaning.
So we are first gonna get this hot and then use a caustic cleaner to break down any left behind like hop particulate or anything. That is the actual caustic chemical. So we mix it with hot water, and then we'll spin this guy for about 20 minutes. Yeah, so we're pulling liquid out of the bottom and putting it back through a spray ball up top that fans it out.
So like all beer dating back to the ancient Egyptians, we start with a grain, or they start with a grain, and their grain has already been malted at this point. That means it's been activated. It was sprouted and dried. I was done somewhere else. I did not get to see this. But they add it to this big pot and they make a mash. And a mash is nothing but cooking this in hot water for about 2 hours while constantly stirring. But if you notice, they have this great machine to do it. And I gotta say, the steam coming off the top, oh, it smelled so good. And it is releasing sugars. So what the malting did is it converted the starch in the grain to sugar. And what the mash is doing, or steeping, is it's taking the sugars out of this and putting it into the water. And that's what the beer is based off. It's based off glucose and water. And this isn't too strange to candy making. Actually, there's an entire type of candy making called barley making, which came off this process. For my other videos, you know, well, we end up using corn syrup as one material, glucose, with cane sugar, sucrose, and they interfere with each other so they don't crystallize. And this makes our candy behave more like glass than like a crystal. And it doesn't want to turn back into cane sugar, you know, the little grains that you find in table sugar. So the beautiful thing about this is the old candy makers needed a source of glucose. So just like the beer makers, they made the mash and they steeped it. And they took that water, which they filtered out, which now had glucose in it, and they mixed it with table sugar, sucrose, and they cooked it down further. By doing this, they interrupted the crystallization, and this is called barley candy. It was made in Poland and the Germanic regions of Europe, and they brought it over as a tradition to New England, especially the Pennsylvania region, and was used in a type of candy called clear toy candy. Now, it's just glucose like any other glucose, but it's also the key of beer making. It is the fuel for the yeast. The yeast makes the alcohol, and that makes the beer. The water from the mash is now going to be moved over to this kettle. It's a giant kettle, and it's where they're going to cook it, add flavor. If they were putting hops in it, which they didn't, this is probably where they do it. And when it's become the right consistency, the right temperature, and the right flavor, they're going to pump it over to the fermentation tank. And in the fermentation tank, which makes this type of beer a little different, they're adding fruit puree. They're adding lime, watermelon, and strawberry. That's going to give the beer its distinctive flavor. And it's going to ferment in here for 18 long days. I'm used to starting a project of candy and finishing it in 2 hours. They're taking 18 days, and that's one of the reasons we made the beer first, so I could taste it. Unlike candy, beer is a living thing. It's taking care of that yeast and making the yeast do what the yeast should do. So now we had to match the flavors, and we did this by going back to Ology 16 days later. The beer isn't finished, but it's close enough for us to get a sample of taste. Jake and I had a great day sampling beers, and we went there first thing in the morning and we tried our strawberry watermelon limeade slush, and it was delicious. It had a huge lime taste. It was very sour. It was strongly, sharply carbonated, but that may have just been the sour playing games. And of course, it was having watermelon and strawberry flavors too. So we sat around and we tasted lots of sips, breaking down the flavors, and Jake went, I can do this. And we came back and we made a couple of test batches, tiny batches of drops, to see if we could do it. We tasted them and we went, we can go one step further. We can carbonate this like we do the other stuff, like we do our lime sours, like we did our champagne candy, and we could really match it. And then we started to brainstorm what we were going to do. we decided that it was going to be an assortment, and the assortment ended up being on the label. When you get the candy, you end up getting our watermelon, our strawberry, and our lime candy, which they depicted beautifully on the front of the can. And then you're going to get an Ology candy, and the Ology candy is going to taste just like the beer. So the bag itself is a collaboration. The candies we make separate, each separate flavor so you can taste them, and one that tastes like the beer, and it really does, because the beer doesn't taste strongly of beer, it tastes strongly of limeade, and that is a wonderful thing. It wasn't until the canning that I had the most fun. I love Rube Goldberg machines, and this thing is great. Cans go in one end, sealed beer goes in the other, it applies the label, it applies the lid, it does it all systematically, and actually, I don't think I could do it justice by explaining it. So why don't you just take a look and watch? Thank you for watching. We do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, we have hundreds of others here on YouTube, and you can find out when all the new videos come out by subscribing to us here and clicking the alerts bell so you don't miss any of them. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can get our candy at www.pd.net. Also, you can visit us if you're ever coming down I-10. We're right off I-10 at the Thomasville Road exit. We're open 7 days a week, and we make candy a lot, so you might be able to catch us. But we don't make it all the time, and we don't have a regular schedule, so if you're lucky, and a lot of people are, you get to see us make candy in person, right out front, which is why we call it public displays of confection. We really appreciate it, and thank you for watching.